Happy Friday. I am super excited to be starting the day with Erin with me today. We are at episode 210, which is crazy to me because I just feel like I started Mavens yesterday, but we are trucking along with episode 210. One of my favorite stories is always listening from women who, decided to change career pathways, and that's kind of what Erin is going to be talking about today. But Erin, welcome to Mavens of Manufacturing. How are you doing today?
Well, other than being scared
Oh,
shitless. So that makes it a good decision, right?
well, you don't have anything to be scared shitless about. This is just a conversation. And anyone who is tuning in, if you want to drop some comments in the comment section and ask Erin personal questions too, please feel free to do that. But Erin, can you just start off by giving us a background of who you are and how you ended up in engineering and manufacturing? Because this wasn't something you initially pursued as a career, was it?
No, it's actually like my fourth career. So I think I finally figured out what I want to do when I grow up, but things could change. But
Right.
no, I grew up in western South Dakota on a ranch, cattle ranch. Um, then as I went to school, I studied teaching, child development, that sort of thing. Spent several years teaching, and then doing some home visits, working with nonprofits, and worked as an artist. And now here I'm in engineering. So a little bit of an eclectic background.
Yeah. So, what kind of artists were you? Like, what were some of the things that you were creating?
So in I did a lot of pottery, and then also I do a lot of creative blacksmithing. So
That's really
metal
cool.
fabrication, sculpture, home decor, things of that nature.
That's really cool. I think blacksmithing is one of the coolest things out there. I love this show. It's called Forged in Fire, and they have only had like maybe two or three women on that show, and one of them was like doing really well with the knife making. But I just thought that was like the coolest thing ever, is just to make knives and swords and shit out of fire
Yeah,
and metal. Like so,
no, it's so much fun. I know lots of bladesmiths. I've actually am friends with several people who have been on that show, and I let them
that's
make the
cool.
blades. I like to make pretty things.
Yeah, that's really cool. And then you said you were a teacher, so what kind of teacher were you?
So I did lots of different things. I spent some years teaching talented and gifted. I've taught remedial math and reading. I've worked with special education. I did a lot of substitute teaching throughout the years. My ex-husband was in the Air Force, so
Okay.
we moved around. There was lots of different schools that I've been in, and I learned a lot. It was nice to be able to have all these different experiences and be able to take
Yeah.
things from different areas.
Yeah.
So
So, out of all of that experience, what was going on in your life that, made you connect with engineering and manufacturing and like put a spark in you to pursue it? Because I know a lot of people that do a lot of different things, and sometimes they don't know what engineering and manufacturing means. Like, they don't know about the opportunities that exist. And there's some that are like, oh, it's dirty, dark, and dangerous. And, there's a lot of opportunities that aren't dirty, dark, and dangerous. So, how did you get connected with what you're doing today?
I spent several years home with my kids. I was
Hmm.
blessed enough to be able to do that. And when I decided I was ready to go back to work, I knew I didn't want to go back into education. I loved teaching, but it just wasn't my thing. It wasn't my passion.
Hmm.
And at that time, I had been blacksmithing for a few years, and I just knew that I loved working with my hands. I loved, if I could have made a career in a well paid, being able to, I like to eat and pay rent all in the same month. So
Right.
art isn't where that's at for most people. So I just, wanted to be able to integrate that into what I did every day in some way. And so
Hmm.
I started looking into some different things, different options. It really came down, I considered getting my welding certifications and things of that nature. But then I remember how old I was, so I knew that I didn't want to work that physically hard. And I said, okay, well, engineering, I guess, is where it's at. Um, and that's kind of how I ended up here, really.
Mhm. So you're at Vega right now, and you ended up there through a co-op program. Is that correct?
That is correct. That
So
is correct.
can you describe that process with us? Like, how did you find out about the co-op program? Well, tell us first what Vega is. What does Vega do?
So VEGA, we make industrial sensors and measuring devices, so level, pressure, density, just in industrial or excuse me, instrumentation. That's the word I was trying to spit out there. So yeah, any non-contact radar. We've got a full portfolio of
Hmm.
anything you might need for measurement. So it's a busy place. We got lots of different things going on.
Yeah. So how was the co-op program? Like, what were some of the things that you did, and how did that help you like just fall in love with engineering and manufacturing?
Um, the cool thing about my co-op experience was that I was just given a project and then
Hmm.
turned loose with it. And I mean, obviously there was some oversight going on, but it was, hey, let's just try this, learn the design process, learn the revision process, come up with five or six, ideas and weed them down to, the best two or three, and then, weed it down further or combine them, or, there's a lot of collaboration, but
Hmm.
it was mine, it was my project to do. And it was kind of just being thrown into the corporate world. It's like, okay, here you go. This is your job, and we all know that you're new. I was expected to ask questions.
Hmm.
I was not expected to turn out some amazing thing. They just wanted me to learn. They want to give me the opportunity to, you know, do the thing
Hmm.
and gain the skills. So I think just the positive support, the the room to fail and learn from that failure. Really, I think that's what made me really enjoy what I do. To be able to know that I don't have to be perfect.
Hmm.
There's always room for there's always ways to correct that imperfection. That's why we test things. That's why we
Yeah.
produce things. So for somebody that struggles with perfection a little bit, it was nice. It was, and I was just encouraged and supported. It was just a great experience.
Were you expecting to stay at Vega after completing that co-op program? Like, did you enter into it knowing you were going to have a job afterwards?
I entered into it knowing that there would be the opportunity to
Hmm.
stay as long as we both liked each other. Basically, is kind of how it went.
Hmm.
Um, I know that's not necessarily the experience for a lot of co-ops, so I was really lucky in that aspect.
What is it about Vegas culture that you really like and enjoy?
I like Vega is very intentional with their work culture and cultivating a positive, collaborative environment. Vega is what we call the home of values, and that's the one thing I really, really respect and admire about a company like Vega, where it's not just a slogan; they really live it. So we've got four values that we focus on here at Vega: curiosity, connectivity, simplicity, and humanity. So beyond our sales and bottom line, we're also doing things, to help out our community. Um,
Hmm.
through humanity, we try to keep our work days simple. We try not to overcomplicate things with too many meetings or things of that nature. We're always encouraged to ask questions or give suggestions, even if it's not your department or your job. Like if you notice something and you have an idea, you're very much encouraged to share that.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I like that. That's what makes Vega, I think, such a great place to work. You're just encouraged to strive to be your best.
I like companies that do that and give you the autonomy to set yourself up for success through failing. I think that's an important aspect of a positive company culture. They're not striving, like you said before, for perfection. They just want you to learn and grow. So, can you get more into the nitty gritty of what your actual position is? Like, what are you responsible for, and what does a day in the life look like for you at Vega?
So that's a funny question. Because I can't. There's I kind of work independently from a lot of the other engineering uh, people. I do a lot of special projects. I work on a
Okay.
lot of our, like I've been developing trade show demos, um, and some one-off projects. Because I'm really creative and have that kind of artistic heart.
Hmm.
Um, they'll that also goes into very creative problem solving. So if they
Hmm.
come, recently I developed a mounting solution for our pharmaceutical customers. It's a tricky thing, like we need to have a point level measurement, but we don't know how to mount it onto this certain vessel. And so the pharmaceutical, our regional pharmaceutical guy, said, "Hey, can you help me with this?" And I said, "Oh, I've got you. Show me what it is, show me the requirements, and I'll figure something out." So I get to do a lot of those kind of fun projects. I'm really really lucky that I have the opportunity to do that.
Are you working a lot in CAD then? Like, what are
I
some
do.
of the tools that you use? Okay.
Oh yeah, yeah. We use NX here. In the past, Creo and um, I'm struggling with words. Other CAD programs, and those
Hmm.
that use them know what those are. But yeah, so I model everything. I have drawings. I have to have drawings. We are ISO compliant, so all of that is very very regulated and overseen.
Real quick, we're going to take a break because we have a lot of comments coming through. Mary Martin said, "Hi, Megan and Erin. Thanks for the session. Love women in production and manufacturing as well as career pivots." So here we go. Yes. And then Sylvan, I, I'm going to try. Cloutier. Thumbs up and a smiley face. If I pronounced your name wrong, I'm so sorry. Then we have Vince from Connecticut. Hello, Vince. Thank you for being here. And then LinkedIn user, if you can drop your name, your settings are not allowing us to see your lovely face, but love the creative problem solving, Erin. And then Vince said he's glad to be here. Erin, were you familiar with CAD and stuff before you entered into the co-op program with Vega, or did you learn about it through that co-op program?
So the co-op actually stemmed from a associate's degree, a technical degree program that I had gone through.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I had learned CAD software and manufacturing skills and things of that nature through that program. So that's kind of where that co-op had started from.
Okay.
And so yeah, I was familiar. The funny thing is that we had switched to NX the week before I started my co-op. So anybody
Okay.
that experienced a massive software change knows how fun that can be. So it was definitely interesting to be dealing with some of those bugs and headaches at the same time. So I learned a lot. I probably learned more because of it, because nobody else knew what they were doing either. So it was all sink or swim.
Yeah. With your experiences as a teacher and as a blacksmith, do you see a lot of crossover with like your skill set? So like what sort of skills as a teacher and as a blacksmith helped you be successful in the position that you're at now in Vega?
I think with my blacksmithing, it influences a lot of, I think of things that from a fabrication
Hmm.
perspective, where, stereotypes exist for a reason, right? And engineers are notorious, for over engineering or putting bolts in the worst possible place or,
Hmm.
whatever the case is. And it gives me a nice perspective of, okay, how is this going to go together in the end? Is it, what are the possible problems? That's blacksmithing. You're constantly thinking ahead, constantly, trying to figure out how am I going to, make this picture in my head a reality.
Hmm.
So I think that has really, really benefited me, and um, that has transferred well. The teaching, I think mostly that has helped a lot. That, I think that would probably also go with creative problem solving, because when you're teaching, if a kid's not getting the concept that you're trying to share, you have to figure out how to make it so that they can understand, right? Some kids learn well, you know, by watching, and some kids learn well by doing, and some kids, you get to a concept and they just go, I don't get it. And so what's around me that I can use to explain, to this child, or to demonstrate, or, you know, I was doing a lot of that, trying to break concepts down into different ways, and I had to be creative in order to meet the children's needs. Uh, so that kind of, really sparked that in me. You developed that skill of thinking outside the box. Um, and also, this I've never worked corporate before. This is my very first corporate job. So I think being able to be comfortable in front of a group of people, dealing with, parents, kind of really, students' parents, kind of translates well into dealing with, different departments, because you have to learn how to communicate in a lot of different ways.
Yeah.
So that's been real beneficial for me as well.
The corporate environment can have a lot of different personalities that clash for sure. So I could only imagine. And I'm happy to hear that you're having a positive experience in that type of environment, because there have been other women I've interviewed who did not like the corporate world because it just was not a good fit for them. But I think it's a hit or miss depending on the company and the leadership at the company. So I have the utmost respect for teachers, because I think they need a lot of patience in teaching those different concepts, especially for kids who learn at different rates. I always feel bad for my boys' teachers, because my son Declan has ADD and my son Ronan has ADHD, so they're not like the most patient kids to work with. But I'm happy with the teachers that they've had, because they've been able to like work with their neurodivergence and get them to sit still sometimes in school. So you mentioned that you work with trade shows and you work on demos sometimes. Like, what's been your most favorite or memorable trade show demo that you've worked on?
Okay, favorite and memorable are two different things.
Well, give us
You
both.
better remember. I was actually just sharing with some colleagues at lunch about, a project I had done that became somewhat painful. That started simple and it didn't end simply. So things like that become memorable.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, that's fair.
right now, I am working on a trade show demo for our Ethernet APL radars that'll be coming out soon, and I'm working with a linear actuator. It's a ball screw. So it's just a big screw, and it has a carriage that goes up and down. But I've never worked with automation before, and nobody else has either. Really, not as directly as this
Hmm.
with any of my, direct colleagues. So it's been a big learning curve, and I'm really excited about it, because it's going to, I just kind of cut carte en blanche to be able to just say, okay, this is the basic concept. We know you're going to rock this. Just have at it. And so, yeah, it's got lights and it's got acrylic tubes that are going to glow, and there's a big plate that goes up and down to demonstrate how fast our Ethernet APL and how accurate it is. And so there's TV screens. There's all sorts of bells and whistles. So I'm excited. It's finally coming together.
Where are you debuting that at?
I can't answer that for sure.
Okay.
I don't go to the trade shows, so I know that there is one coming up. I feel like in September.
Is it
Um,
FabTech?
I'm not, honestly,
Uh,
I don't want to say and be wrong, so
no,
I'm just
that's okay. I'll have to check your if you have it on your website, I'll check your website, but I'd like to see it because I'll be at FabTech in September, but that's more metal fabrication, so I don't know if that's a fit
yeah,
for you
probably
guys.
not. I know like there's a Rockwell show coming up that they've been talking about.
Okay. So maybe automation fair. I don't know. Maybe that would be
Honestly, like I said, I don't want to speak out of turn, so
to be
I'm
continued. We'll keep that update so if people want to go to that show, they can stop by your booth and check
yes,
out
they
their show. That'd be exciting. That'd be really
yes,
fun.
it's exciting.
So, one of the favorite. It's my favorite thing that you said because I agree with it 100%. You said one of the best things in life starts with a decision that scares the shit out of you, and I agree with that 100%. What's a decision that changed everything for you that really scared the shit out of you?
I think, gosh, there's so many things, but I would say the one was probably getting divorced, and I hate to say that for anybody that's happily married, but um, I growing up, especially kind of in a Gen X generation, not to date myself, but um, you know, we're women in this generation, in my generation, kind of are experiencing a real transition, right? When I was
Hmm.
little, and granted, now growing up in Western South Dakota, we were a little more sheltered, but little girls were, kind of society said, do what you're supposed to do, what you should do what you should, not what you
Yeah,
want. And I did that. Not that I didn't want to, stay home with my kids or be a teacher or any of that. I loved it, but it wasn't what I wanted. And um, my relationship with my ex husband was not good, and I was not happy, as most people aren't before they get divorced. And it gave me the opportunity and the permission to just go for it.
hmm
But let me tell you how scary that was, because I was completely financially dependent. I worked part time, for basically for fun money, and had not been in a real job setting, other than this part time job for a while. And then before that, I was with home with the kids. So I had a big gap in my resume. And I took that step right into the abyss and was like, okay, here we go. So it was scary. It's definitely scary when you've got small children. It's not just me, right? I've got other people to
right.
think about.
Yeah.
And how is this going to affect them? And, you know, I've got to consider, the fact that unlike, a lot of 20-year-olds or, the kids in their 20s when they're starting a career out of college, they can work those extra hours, they can establish themselves into a career, and I've got to try and balance. So it was really scary. It was really scary to take that step.
Hmm.
And, but, I just kind of told myself, well, nothing's killed you yet. So, you'll figure it out. You'll either crash and burn or you won't. So,
Yeah.
you know,
How has engineering really helped provide that balance though? Because I know one of the conversations floating around in our sector is, this idea of flexibility. Because before the pandemic, everybody had it in their heads that you have to be at work all the time. You can't work from home because if you're working from home, then you're not working at all. And then the pandemic kind of forced us into thinking, like rethinking, maybe we can be flexible, especially for working parents out there, because there's a lot of working parents out there that have to pick up and drop their kids off at school. They need daycare and stuff. So I think it's forcing certain companies to be more creative. I talked to one woman where they actually have a daycare at their manufacturing facility, and parents can bring their kids there, and then they have the bus route come through and pick up the kids and drop them off before and after school. So how has engineering really helped you, get that flexibility with work life balance?
I would say now again, like I have to say, this is my first corporate job, so I really don't have a lot to compare it to. I was
That's fair.
so lucky to end up at Vega the way I did. You know, and I love hearing that about the daycare, and I have to, you kind of remind everybody too that it's not just women, right? It's not just women that have
Yeah,
great kids and need these conveniences and things. Um, but yeah, engineering does help in the fact that if for some reason I need to work from home, for instance, my daughter broke her ankle, and she needed to have surgery. She had a triplanar fracture through her growth plate. So until they could get surgery, she just had the soft cast, and so she wasn't allowed to get up out of bed except for using the restroom. And I just told my boss, I said, listen, this is what's happening. And I was just handed a laptop, and then told, well, I guess you're working from home a couple days now, until you can get your feet on the ground. Get to a place where, you don't have to. So, that was, just working. And I think companies too are getting much better at seeing their employees as individuals instead of just having
yeah.
these carte blanche policies that it's either it's black and white, or it's yes you can or no you can't. I think that Vega's great, and like I said, I don't have anything to compare it to, but I see it a lot in my friends that yeah, their companies are becoming much more flexible to meet the needs of the individual employee instead of trying to put everybody in the same category.
Do you think growing up, because you mentioned before, like growing up in South Dakota and traditional stereotypes and that, do you think that if you knew that engineering was a possibility for you to pursue, you would have took that route instead of the one that you took?
No, so I was. My parents were great. I was always able to do what I wanted. Ran with the boys. I did everything the boys did. I had two older brothers and a younger sister. Um, but yeah, I was definitely a tomboy, and my dad would have me help him, fix the mechanic because I have long, skinny arms and small hands, so I could reach into the small places and do so we don't have to, take everything apart. So I learned a lot. I was always encouraged um, to do those things. Just because I was a girl didn't mean that I couldn't go out and work
Mhm.
and break and train horses just like the boys. Um, I think a lot of what I felt as limitations came more from society and what was on TV at that time, and what that subconscious message that you're given as you're growing up and what's expected of you,
Mhm.
or not expected. So my parents were great. I grew up doing what being exposed to everything that the boys were exposed to. So.
I think being on a ranch would be so fun. But I've never grown up on a ranch before, so I'm only going off of like shows and stuff. I did spend some time in Texas a couple of weeks ago on my cousin's Longhorn farm, and I was just like, I don't want to leave this. It was just so peaceful and fun. But I'm always on technology, so I'm getting kind of sick of it. And taking that downtime was really helpful. So you mentioned that you're from Gen X, and we don't have to like call out your age completely, but you did pivot later on in life, and right now with all the workforce challenges that our sector is facing, there's a lot of conversation about how to recruit and attract younger generations, but I think we're missing an opportunity to also recruit and attract older generations to engineering and manufacturing. And I think it's just important, especially within engineering, because on a global scale, women only represent like 16% of engineering. And I had a conversation last week where surprisingly, there's a lot more women in like chemical and biochemical engineering, and there's less percentage of women in like electrical and mechanical. And now I'm trying to figure out why that is, because I'm just trying to see what it is about chemical and biochemical engineering that attract women specifically versus the other options available. But for anybody who might be like struggling with, is this my pathway or should I do something else? Like, what would you say to other women who might be part of, Gen X or a millennial, and they want to try something different now? Like, what would you say about what advice would you give to them in maybe thinking about engineering as an option?
I would say, you know, examine what you enjoy, right? Whether it's in manufacturing or not. I say, and it seems so cliche, right? Like if you do what you love, you never work a day in your life and all of
Right.
that. Um, Honestly, that's just kind of how I ended up here, right? Like I was blacksmithing, I loved it. If that's how I could have support myself, I would have. But um, you know, I said, okay, how can I incorporate this? And I think, find what you want to do, or find and figure out what you like doing, and then figure out a way to get paid for it. Kind of how it came down. Obviously I'm not blacksmithing at work, but I do get to work in materials, and I get to build things, and I get to work with my hands, and I get to imagine a solution. Like if somebody brings me a problem that their customer is having, I can say, oh, I can be creative. I can get this picture in my head and then make that into a reality. That which is a lot of what engineering and research and development is.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, it's just kind of it kind of mirrors really in a way. So I would say that start with that, and then you know chase that happiness. And a lot of times you take a step, you think what you want to do, and then you get exposed to something else, and you're like, oh wait, I never thought I would like that. I never thought I would enjoy that. And for me, I actually initially wanted to go into biomechanical engineering. I've always been fascinated with the medical industry, but when I got here, I learned that it wasn't necessarily the products I was producing; it was my experience, and that's what was important. I love coming to work. I enjoy the people that I work with. And that to me is way more important than the fact that I'm not, finding some cure for, osteoporosis, but I am helping people. I try to make my colleagues' lives easier, my
Yeah.
customers' lives easier. So I'm still putting that energy out into the world, but just in a different way.
Do you still Are you still involved with the co-op program? Like, do you offer any sort of mentorship or help with that process?
Um, Yes and no. So we typically have in our engineering department, we usually have one or two co-ops come through each semester. I typically don't work directly with them. I do help them out. Obviously, I'm always available to help and support the these co-ops. Um, but yeah, so they, a lot of times, the my boss, the head of the engineering department, kind of decides what projects they can work on, and they like to put them on projects they can kind of see through to the end. So when you're
Yeah.
working in a 3 month, period, I will tell you, trade show demos typically don't get done in 3 months. So there's a lot of, well, that didn't go the way I thought it would. So I have a little bit. I've had them help me out in some things. But yeah, not directly, I guess is the short answer.
There's still some engineers that I know that are working on trade show demos up until like the very last minute of a trade
Oh
show
yeah.
starting. It's just, I hope they get fed well and get the beverages of their choice when they do trade shows because it seems very stressful. Well, Erin, I mean, this has been such a great conversation, and I'm very grateful to have you on because I really do want people, not just women, but men too, that if they decide to change their mind later on in their career to try something else out, I want them to know that it's possible. And yes, it will be a struggle and there's probably some challenges to it, but it's not impossible to change your mind later on
Oh,
in your career to do something different. But is there anything that I missed? Like, were you hoping I asked a question and didn't ask it? Like, is there something else you want to
um,
highlight?
oh, probably. I can't think
No, that's okay. Well, Erin, if you had one ask for our audience today, what would your biggest ask be for them today?
I would just say, be supportive. It's easy to get your blinders on and see things in one way. Um, Being collaborative, and it doesn't matter, if you're in manufacturing or underwater basket weaving.
Mm-hmm.
I would say, let me rephrase that. I would say always be a student at heart. You know, never quit learning, and it does. I'm a big, huge nerd, so I like documentaries, and I listen to podcasts about things that how to make things, or history or whatever. Medical. I listen to a lot of medical field podcasts because I just, like I said, I find it fascinating. But yeah, never stop learning. Always be curious, and never quit pushing yourself. You get one chance on this big old rock we're riding around on, and make it make it the best ride you can. You challenging for me, I love challenging myself. I love new things. I love learning new things. For instance, I just recently started archery, right? Compound bows and target shooting and stuff. And I've become slightly obsessed, but I love it. Like, I'm learning these new skills, and I'm challenging myself to, shoot from farther distances, and things like that, and learning all about the physics and the science
Yeah.
behind, all of that, which has been really fun. Um, you know, that would be my biggest advice. Like, and then then you find people, right? Because it's not just the things you do, but the people you do them with. And you surround yourself with good people. People find you. When you find your thing and your passion, then people also find you that you want to be around. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Very true. Are you, so with the archery, are you using a crossbow or are you using an actual traditional?
No, it's a compound bow.
What is
So
that?
um,
I'll have to look it up.
so you think like a longbow or something you see in the movies, where they have just the
Oh,
stick and the string. That's
yeah.
that's the curve or longbow. It's a traditional bow. A compound bow is like you have the bow, but then there's strings that kind of go up and down, back and forth.
Okay. That's
And so
cool.
yeah, so you draw back, and then those the strings pull the what's called the limbs down, and it compresses all of that energy and forces that energy into the arrow when you release.
That's
So
super cool. I like
and
that kind of stuff. Are
you
you
get
gonna
a
try
lot
to
of fun.
make are you gonna try to make your own bow now?
Oh heavens no.
Oh, I was just
No, no,
I
I
like
think I'll let the companies do that, and I'll just shoot it
yeah,
and enjoy that part of it. I'm sure eventually I'll get into changing out different pieces and parts
yeah.
and
Or
finding
either
what works.
make your own tips on the arrow part. Let them go.
No, not that either, because
Not
when you're swinging a hammer, when you're swinging a 3 or 4 pound hammer, you can't always be that accurate and precise. So I have been making bottle openers that look like arrowheads. It's
That's cool.
that's about as close as I'm willing to get.
That's cool. Well, Erin, thank you so much for joining me on Mavens of Manufacturing today to share your story. I really appreciate the time that you've taken out of your day. If anyone has questions for you, especially women who might be considering an engineering career pivot, what is the fastest and easiest way to get a hold of you or connect with you?
That's a great question. Other than broadcasting my cell phone number, um, I'm on LinkedIn. That's probably the best way to get a hold of me, as far as Googling and finding. Um,
Okay.
so I
Oh,
would suggest that. Otherwise, it's like I could put out personal information, and then that makes me
no,
scared.
don't do that. No,
That
don't do that.
scares me,
We'll
and
just,
it makes me scared. So
yeah, we'll
LinkedIn,
just have We'll just have them connect with you on LinkedIn or connect with Vega on LinkedIn, and then they can reach out to your HR department or something if
absolutely,
they have
yeah,
a personal question.
yes,
Well, Erin, thank you again to everyone tuning in and for your comments. I appreciate the comments and the conversation. I hope you guys have a great weekend. Stay tuned because I have a message from my merch supplier, Fresh Horizons. If you're looking to put some pep into your brand, be sure to connect with them. They're a family owned business in Beloit, Wisconsin, and they do amazing things with branding or branded merch. So I hope you guys have a great weekend, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye, everyone. This episode of Mavens has been sponsored by Fresh Horizons Group. Fresh Horizons Group is a family run company that was founded on the premise of helping organizations and businesses better tell their story through high quality branded apparel and promotional items. Freshen up your brand by contacting Fresh Horizons today at freshhorizonsgroup.com.